I think I kind of want to make the point that because you have a real spectrum here of clients that have different budgets, different resource sets, but there's a real clear theme kind of in all that. Even if you got a ton of money, it's still about making the most with less, right? The theme we've all heard. So that, in my mind, that one of the things that I learned from this project is that that's one of the emerging methodologies, right? Is how do we figure out how to do more with less, regardless of what resources we have. So I came away with Scrappy. It's maybe the most important emerging methodology. Jim, you want to?
Mine might be anxiety. Mine's going to be a little different. I want you to think about what you do in the total context and the total outcome of it. I mean, we talked about copy testing, we talked about the end user, how they're going to react to an intelligent commercial. You might think that's the end of the game, and in some cases it is. But for me, when I do some of the things that I do, it affects my sales reps' personal livelihood. It affects their ability to send their kids to college. I have gotten calls from sales reps going, why the F did you say? I found out that you were the one who priced that product at that price. Why the F is it priced like that? I want to know. So I guess that's very important. Realize the implications of what you do throughout the organization, because you might not think of it like that. In fact, in my presentation, I got a picture of a mobile to show how complex the organization is and how things are intricately connected that you might not think about. So, and part of my presentation is I'm not one to jump on the bandwagon on a new way to do something that I already have a proven way to do it. In the case of setting a price for a product, I'm not going to risk the livelihood of my sales reps, and me for that matter, on something that I'm not 100% sure with. And at the end of the game, my credibility, my personal brand is what communicates some of these results. So think about the context of that. Let me see what else I have. So I think that's kind of important. Realize where you are in the organization, not that you're just executing to these objectives and not that you're doing it efficiently and you're going to get good scores on your annual review. It's the total impact that you have. And I think as market research folks, you forget that. You're just in the moment.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jim. Linda?
Sure. In our presentation, and we gave that already, and so if you were there, you recognize these themes. Clearly, we were all about doing more with less as well. And rather than Scrappy, we had tried Scrappy as well. But given our scale at Walmart, we had to take a very systematic approach, and, coupling with some of the Scrappy things that we're doing, to really address the transformation of the customer insights function and the capabilities at Walmart. So we really did that in 3 ways. You're going to see us using technology as the fundamental foundation for how we changed those business processes. For us, emerging methods, in many cases, was doing this, using the same research methods and the same techniques, but doing it fundamentally in a systematic way. We brought our entire research, quantitative research function in-house. We manage it all. We still use partners for panels. We still use partners from the research suppliers, but they all work inside the Walmart environment. All that is managed internally. Gave us a lot of benefits to be able to go quicker, to provide our better quality results, higher reliability, validity, etc., that our partners could trust, and do it faster, exceedingly faster. The biggest benefit that we saw was speed to turn around research. It wasn't just how fast we could compress the time, it was that because of knowledge about a customer that we could use to infuse into our surveys, we could actually reduce items that were in the surveys themselves. We fundamentally rethought the entire business process, how we worked from technology with our business partners in customer insights and analytics and with our research suppliers. We enabled them with a portal so they can have access to our entire repository of research findings, our library of items, our library of results, our ability to do meta-analysis increased, and we reduced rework and actually duplicate work as well. We, as a result of that, we benefited with an externality of having this processing available throughout our entire international market. So we have a really big global footprint, and we've enabled all of our research partners, and not just those in the US, with these capabilities. And then finally, what you would have heard is that we have integrated the market research function very inherently with our data science organization. You may have heard Salome Aguilar on the team. She leads that organization right now and has both market researchers, behavioral scientists, and data scientists all reporting into her. It's one product team for our market research platform. It sits within our tech organization, and our business partners who are the inside professionals in the marketing organization leverage that platform to do all that work. Either self-serve, which is the do-it-yourself part of it, or we enable that through some consulting from our own organization as well. In that presentation, I talked about a lot of the sessions here that address market research and data science. It still comes across as pardon me if you have toddlers, but how toddlers parallel play, right? They don't play with each other; they play next to each other, and they kind of, they're fine with that. When we see a lot of that kind of desire to integrate research and data science using big data, I'm still kind of in that vein. For us, it's actually inherent. That's one of the things we were driving through because we knew that was going to be part of quality and speed. For example, within Walmart, we do over 6 million customer interactions alone just in customer feedback on an annual basis. That's a lot of data, and almost all of that feedback, not only from store experience, but from returns, online, et cetera, all that have open ends. So there's a lot of comments that we can achieve, we can pull in from that. We use a lot of AI and some ML within that AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning, to analyze all those open ends, look for specific patterns that not only help us understand performance measurement, but we can react really quickly to something that we may be seeing in a store that needs attention immediately by a store manager. That stuff would have been latent and not used at all prior to this process. And even more importantly, when you have a customer experience survey methodology where, like for us, our store managers are bonused on their performance in customer experience, fraud can happen. And so we've integrated our AI processes to detect fraud and find those sources to stem it, so we remove the temptation from the users. So anyway, I think that's what hopefully you have heard if you were there, and it's pretty exciting. I am living the dream.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Just a couple of, maybe we'll dig into a couple of things a little deeper. And I'll try to hold some time for a few questions afterwards. But Ben, how does Merck decide when an emerging methodology is still a fad or it's become proven? It's worthy of, because I know you guys see, you're bombarded with everything that comes across the horizon.
Yeah, so I want to go back to something you said at the beginning, which is, it's about using the right methodology with the right person, the right product, at the right time. I don't know about you all, but I have not always been successful in that, right? And so that's not always the methodology's fault. That's my fault for misjudging the business situation or misjudging the value of the methodology for that particular customer type. But it doesn't mean, we hear a lot today about failing fast. Right? It's like, raise your hand if you love to fail in front of your peers, right? Like, nobody wants to fail. So it's hard, but if you're going to be on the hunt for innovative technology and innovative methods, part of that is accepting that it's not always going to work at every moment. And we've had several things that were kind of faddish to start with, but then we did something new with it and kind of said, okay, well, it didn't work here. This is what we thought it was going to do. It didn't work. We're going to move it over here, and we're going to try and retool it a little bit. And sometimes we're successful, and sometimes it leads to a better outcome. But if you're gonna try new things, and everybody's here, I think, to learn about new methodologies and meet new connections, and it's a lot about kind of the newness, right? What can we do differently? What can we do, with less? How do we still, honor our, traditional methodologies and mix them with new ones to add greater value? So I think part of it is, trying it, right? There's no shortcut, and you can pilot things, right? In our organizations, we often will say this is a pilot, right? We don't know if this is gonna work. It may work, it may not. You will have some customers that love to do pilots. You will also have some customers that hate to do pilots because they don't want to take the risk. So what I would encourage you to do is find groups of pockets of customers that are willing to partner with you on it. They can do a number of things. They can cost share with you. They can risk share with you. They can also come up with different projects that are a little bit higher profile or maybe a little bit more medium or low, right? And if you take a pilot on a more of a medium assignment, maybe the stakes aren't quite so high. Pressure's not as high as maybe the highest profile product. And those are some of the ways that we try to vet these things. But I got to be honest with you, we're not always successful, and sometimes it's a fad when we get to the end and we say, you know what, this had really good promise, but we couldn't find a home for it. We couldn't find a spot where it worked. So, I would encourage you to have that too, right? In your expectation set, right? Some things are just not going to work, but a lot will, right? And if it didn't work in one area, what could you do to change it to make it work somewhere else?
Great. Thanks, Ben. Erica, can you share some examples of Scrappy methods? I want to be clear, Scrappy is not a derisive or derogatory term, right? Scrappy is a smart, good thing. And Scrappy is one of those things that has a lot of latitude, right? Could be something really big and really expensive, but it's made more efficient, more effective, and that's a little bit scrappy. Or it could be a different way of doing things so that it is actually scrappy.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things, and I talked about it earlier, is that, you may have this ideal method in your mind of, well, this is the problem and this would be the best method I could use to solve this problem. But being scrappy is then figuring out, well, why is that the best method? And can I take some element of that and figure out a different way to do it that doesn't require me to, for instance, travel around the country and do focus groups, right? Focus groups are great. You get the in-person interaction. You can do, various exercises with folks. They can interact with each other. But when you're thinking about your project, think about, well, what is it that I'm really trying to get out of this focus group? Is it really important that I'm seeing the emotion on their faces and hearing them talk and seeing those observational cues? Well, if that's the case, could you do a video chat with customers one-on-one and have that same kind of feeling and get that same information back? It's not the same as a focus group, but will it get you to the same place or a similar place? So that's one solution that we have used. If you say, well, it's not really the visual interaction, it's more the interaction between the participants. We're in an exploratory stage and we want them to bounce ideas off of each other. Great, well, maybe you could use a community. Is there some way you could, there's a community tool out there. I used Facebook when I was working at a startup that had no money whatsoever. And so we just sort of leveraged the Facebook platform, but that gave us that interpersonal connection and they were bouncing ideas off of each other. And no, I couldn't see their faces as they were talking, but that was okay for what we were trying to accomplish, and it allowed me to kind of actually in some ways make it better for a focus group, be better than a focus group, because I was able to do it over the course of 5 days, and so there was more thoughtful response, right? I could post some activities and I could ask them to think about it and then come back the next day and give their answer. And I got a lot more thoughtful responses than I think I might have gotten through a focus group. So in some way it might have worked better. And then if you want to talk about the mall intercept.
Yeah, so there was a test location in a single location at a mall that we really wanted to understand if this test store was going to affect awareness, consideration, and perceptions of our brand. And in my ideal world, I would have done an online survey where I can survey a wide variety of people, get a whole bunch of responses. However, I wanted to make sure that people were actually at the mall, that they actually had the ability to walk by this test store and understand their perceptions. And if we were to do an online survey, we'd have to ask all these screeners, probably would have been after the fact. The incidence rate would have been so low that it wouldn't have been really reasonable and would really be hard to find these people. And the best way was going to be actually going to the mall ourselves and recruiting other people in our organization to help us collect that data in person. It was not ideal in that it was a lot of effort, and we do have a lot of introverts on our team. But we actually got people excited to help us out with this because they got to go and talk to real customers in real time and hear from people in real life that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do otherwise. And because we were able to get a lot of people to help us out, we trained them on the right way to do this research, and we got a lot of responses. We got hundreds of responses, which is actually more than I would have expected from an online survey trying to target a very specific location.
That's great. I'm sure it created a lot of engagement with your team too.
Absolutely.
Jim, can you share some of your thoughts on research and how it's a good way to get permission for something new?
Yeah, I'm going to dovetail onto some of the things that Ben said. It's risk reward. In my career, there's not a whole lot of reward for what you do. There's a lot of risk sometimes. And we used a relatively new technique to me that we found some really undiscovered insight. And the sales cycle for that, for the vendor, was probably 2 or 3 years. She kept saying, interacting with me appropriately, saying, you guys should really try this. You're going to go places you've never been before. And finally, my back was against the wall on a particular product and brand manager, and I needed something different. And the only way that I could successfully do it, because again, my integrity, the ability to speak truth to power, relies on your personal brand. Therefore, you can't have too many black marks next to your name. You might lose credibility. I also have outlived 2 VPs who actively tried to get me fired. They were fired. So I'm very aware of this risk-reward thing. So one of the ways that I got this particular project funded was I started planting seeds to the organization, saying we need to do some research on research. I have this technique. I don't know if it's going to work the way I want it to work, but we need to find out. We need to do research on research. And by the process of doing this over several months, it was perceived as, okay, we're going to find out about this technique, and we're hopeful that we find something new about this brand that we previously had been doing research on for 10 years. And it was different. It was scary. And at the results presentation, I did bring a big bottle of prescription that looked like antidepressants. They weren't. Just to make the point that this is anxiety producing. We did research on research, and if it failed, then it wasn't going to impact my brand nearly as much. It didn't, thankfully. So I think that's part of it. The other thing too is that and a lot of you are on the vendor side, be very cognizant of your sales cycle and how you communicate with folk like me. Understand walk a mile in my shoes on how we decide on what we do, how we spend our money, who we spend it with. I think that's very, very important. Dovetail real quickly onto something else. I also was part of a team that brought in a new way to do media planning. Totally different. It's not even a market research function. But I did work in an ad agency, and I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. And rather than do the standard media planning that everybody does, we got connected up with a startup firm that we looked at 63 trillion variables and constructed a segmentation, a media segmentation like nobody has ever seen. And test and control, it worked out marvelously. But the sales cycle for that, because that was truly innovative, was 3 years. But the people who were communicating to me understood how things work. So risk reward, mitigation of risk, spending some money on research can mitigate that risk. Oh, and I just want to make it clear, I was never a subject in your federal prison.
Again, the theme is being mindful, right? Is really mindful of the situation, mindful of what's going on, and so it's okay to fail as long as you're failing mindfully, right? And maybe putting the warnings out, right? That we're doing this for a reason. So, speaking of quadrillion data points, how many? I have no idea. Walmart must have more data than any organization in the world, right? I'm fascinated with what Linda's done. Linda, we'd love to know more about how you deliver tremendous big data analysis and insights by rethinking your processes and operational models.
You know, I shared in the beginning that my role, my function, I'm in Walmart Tech, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you are in the technology organization of your organization? Not a single, yeah. Okay. How many of you have to work with your technology partners in your organization to get stuff done? Doesn't it seem odd that the entire research platform is in the technology organization of our company? And I have to tell you, if we were not in technology, I do not think we could have pulled it off, right? The approach that we took was recognizing that the research platform, this capability, our entire ability to transform that process, had to be thought of as a product. The marketing research platform as product. And we treated it like a product. We had a product manager, and we have a product manager for it. We have teams that consist of the scientists, all sorts of scientists, and the engineers working together with the project manager. We use agile development capabilities, and we think everything through from the tech platform itself to all the algorithms that come out of it as individual products that need to be managed and maintained, right? And having that as this center platform enabled us to work with our business partners like our customer insights and analytics organization to use that platform so that they can achieve the speed and the quality and the cost reductions. That's one of the things you would have heard from us as well, is that we had to do all of that I just described before with half the budget that we started with, right? So it's pretty significant. One of the key things about all this is making sure we're using not just the right research method, but the overall right science method for the job. We used to spend a lot of time in primary research really trying to understand customer loyalty. Loyalty not only to our brand, but the brands that we carry within our brand, within our box. And try to understand how customers would make substitute decisions. We brought in a lot of insights from our CPG partners, and their insights team was really important. But at the end of the day, our measurement systems only really allowed us to understand at a merchant level who runs the P&L, right? What would happen in my own category, right? If I made a change, how would I optimize the profitability in my own category, right? So all this work we were doing with loyalty on the research space could not be activated by our merchants, right? I'm the yogurt buyer, right? I'm looking at all the yogurt that I have, and I'm looking at every single yogurt item, which is productive and which is not. And in retail, productive means, are you delivering sales, right? For that SKU, do you have enough sales coming through? And if a new product had to come in, something had to come out, and what you would pull is the least productive item. There goes, the blueberry yogurt or the pomegranate yogurt, right? But what we didn't understand at the individual yogurt level, because you couldn't with market research, was what did that do to the loyalty of that customer, not only to the product, but to the category, and really sometimes that's the reason you went to the store, to the entire box, right? So we started infusing all of our knowledge about individual customers and how they're making trade-off decisions to measure loyalty, substitutability, where there are complements within categories and across categories, and helping our merchants truly optimize the profitability of their entire category, and department leaders across all of their product. That allowed us to use the efficiencies of the data science to answer that question, and then leverage all of our research dollars on things that you simply cannot infer with big data. So.
Great, thank you. I think I think it's interesting to think about this more in terms of, rather than emerging methodologies, it's more, we need to think more in terms of emerging ecosystems, right? It's much more about the situations we're facing and the tools that we have and the way we might rethink the tools we have and also rethink the uses of the new tools that we have. So we do have a lot of emerging methodologies and technologies and things like that, but I think it's incumbent upon us to be smart, and maybe be smarter and do more with less than we've ever done before. So that seems to be the theme here. We have time maybe for one or two questions. We're close to time up, but before we do the questions, I want to be sure and thank these panelists for their presentations, for their insight, and for taking